Welcome to the Restless Creatives podcast. Comfortable chats with inspirational creatives. Hosted by three self-confessed restless creatives, Lucy Hunter, Fiona Pickles and Bridget Girling. This week we chat with Mark Straver. He owns Hortus Loci, a wholesale plant nursery which has been supplying so many of those amazing trees and plants that we covet in the Main Avenue Gardens at Chelsea Flower Show for over 10 years.
Does that work?
Yes! Yes!
Oh, hang on.
Oh. Yay! Oh, he's got to go.
Oh, what's he done?
Hang on, I'll just get rid of it. Hang on. That's better.
There you are. Hello!
But we haven't got sound.
It's because it's connecting to audio.
Yeah.
There we go. Does that work?
Yes!
Yay!
Yay! I'm not touching anything now. Everything, honestly.
But it's really good though that we usually meet half an hour beforehand to sort out all of the technical stuff because we're just
I know. I'm quite good at work. It's all fine. It's my phone at home. It doesn't. Then I don't know what to do. And I keep looking like when I look like a turkey advert with my
Stop it!
I look like an advert.
You don't look like a turkey advert.
I'm going to have to start wearing polo necks now. I mean, I'm wrong now.
Tie.
Yeah, ties, yeah. How are you? You okay?
Yeah, it's a bit frazzled, but it's all fine. It's just all this search toing and froing. We're doing all our planting stuff now. We've obviously, with no shows, events, or travel, so my job gone. This is 1 year to the day that I got back from Venice, or I was going to Venice on my last forever trip.
Right.
So of course, then we've made a huge about turn, and no shows, events, or travel for the whole year. So of course, we'll be doing. But our landscaping team and retail has been going from strength to strength. But then we had Brexit in that as well, so of course that made it more tricky because it's fine importing stuff, but it needs to be it's a lot slower. It does work still, but instead of expecting a lorry here within a week, it's more like within a month.
Not good for those impatient landscapers then.
No, and of course, if we also on top of that arrange to actually plant as well, it makes it worse.
Yeah, nightmare. So tell us about.
See my little Mohican. What do you think?
It's lovely. Lockdown haircut.
Yeah, I did it myself the other day.
Really? Never tell Mark.
I've never seen such a mess in my life. It took me 15 minutes to try and cut my hair and about an hour and a half to tidy up the mess.
Mark, let me introduce you to Bridget and Fiona. Can you see them?
Hello.
Yeah,
hello.
Bridget and
How do I do
Fiona.
that screeny thing? So I then, participants. So I press that and see what happens.
Can you not see anybody else?
I can only see Lou. So let me try participants.
Oh, that's okay. We'll just
Is it your gallery view?
Yeah.
If you swipe, you should be able to swipe right, I think.
Do I?
Okay. It's not a dating app.
Yeah, well, now I can do that.
Don't tell him to swipe right. You see us all now.
I can see you all now.
There you go. So Bridget,
that's me. Hello.
Hello, Bridget.
And Fiona.
Hi. Very nice to meet you. We've heard lots about you.
Yes, all bad.
Well, a little bit of bad, a little bit of good.
So Mark, for those, I obviously know you very well, but for those who don't, can you just, and all our podcast listeners, tell us what it is that you do?
Well, I started a company in 2011 called Hortus Loci, and basically what we are, we're a nursery. We've got a 17-acre site in Hook in Hampshire, and we grow mainly perennials, but we provide a one-stop shop for landscape architects. So most of our customers, nearly all our customers, are landscape architects, and it's our job to put together whole orders. So, trees, hedging, perennials, the whole lot. So we order. What we do is most obviously landscape architects are office-based or London-based or whatever it might be, and so we've got a nursery. So we act as a collating service, and we can deliver the whole order in bed order or whenever you like to one place at one time. That's really our job. It's sorting out. It's a job that no one else really wants to do because it's a horrible job. And so because I'm not very clever, that's what we thought we'd do.
You're very good at it.
Yeah, so that's our job. But we also, so we don't get involved with commercial stuff. We also have a retail side in a coffee shop, which is shut at the moment, which is a pain. We also very, sort of fairly heavy on shows and events because we grow our plants. The starting point for our perennials is a 3-litre pot, which is bigger than most nurseries. And the idea is that the plants are in the pot they want to be in, not what transport dictates they should be in. So that's where we started. So we get very heavily involved. I think we're the largest supplier of Chelsea Flower Show for the big Main Avenue garden, full-size Main Avenue gardens, have been for many years.
I think that's how I first became aware of you, actually, as a company, was just you're listed on virtually every show garden.
Yes, I know. I know. But even though although that doesn't always happen, which is a shame. But a lot of people with show gardens, they always say that they don't necessarily want everyone else to know where they get their plants from. So that was always a bit of a bone of contention, really, because some people happily say that we grew the plants, and other people forget to put us on their board.
Well, then you don't have to work with them next year.
That's what I know.
He doesn't. Very picky.
Yeah.
Yes. But so that in a nutshell is what we do. And increasingly so, we're also setting up. We're not interested in the internet at all, but we're after last year got accelerated quite quickly as well. We do doorstep deliveries for locals, if we get locked down or shut down again, which we did last spring in retail. And we're setting up the cash and carry for landscape, because the other thing is one of the biggest areas of that are around are for landscapers, general landscapers, are not monster landscapers or don't get huge jobs. But typically, any landscaper, they'll want 1 or 2 trees, some heathers, some alpines, some perennials, some herbs. And of course, if you put that through a wholesale system, the paperwork and the time to put it on the system is more than the job's worth. So what we're doing is setting up a cash and carry, so for select and deliver for smaller landscapers as well, because that's a huge area of growth. One that, for wholesale, it's very tricky, to try and offer a wholesale service to a small landscaper, but most people are small landscapers, so that's what we're doing as well, which will be ready by March, April. And then in the autumn, we're eventually going ahead now with having a tree nursery as well.
Yes.
So once if we can get back on an aeroplane, I can go travelling and buying trees and shrubs again. Now, what I do is, because I had to, up to last year, I'd be on an aeroplane every 10 days of the year, on a different nursery in a different country, choosing plants or trees with landscape architects or on my own, and for various specific jobs. And of course, what happens is the more you travel, the more you know, the more people ask you, the more you travel.
Yes.
And most people, as we know, don't really like traveling or can't travel because they're married, got kids and everything else. So that was my job up until last year as well. So with everything else happening, with plant health issues being, coming to the fore, what we're doing is setting up a tree nursery. So when I go to nurseries, rather than just go to buy stuff that I need to buy, we're also set up partnerships with some of these nurseries where we can have stock on sale or return, because it'll be a hefty investment in stock, maybe £1 million worth of stock, where we can have stuff on sale or return that we know we will sell, because we've got many years of knowing what people would like. So that's the idea. And that tree nursery for the final 4 acres will be set up in around about October, November.
Yeah, very exciting.
So so the one-stop shop will be complete. So rather than say, look, here's all the perennials and I can get the trees and hedging for you, we can just say, look, here we go, guys, we've got everything here for you. So that's
how fabulous is that, girls?
So is this something you had in mind you wanted to do, or has the whole of the last year?
No, we always had that in mind.
You just didn't have the time.
No, well, I did. No, I didn't have the money. I mean, because what happens is, for instance, if you were, when you're buying trees for Chelsea, those trees are terribly important. But on the ground, an average full-size Main Avenue garden, you might have 7 or 8 trees of varying stature. But if you're going to a nursery that has 1,000 acres and you're buying 7 trees, you're not a very exciting customer. I mean, so you can imagine if you're going to 1,000 acres, coming back with 8 trees after 2 or 3 days, the nurseries themselves get quite grumpy as well. Although they do get the whole Chelsea thing, but the designers that are doing Chelsea don't. And of course, the nurseries get quite cross about, well, guys, you come all this way to mess about with a few trees. So what I always do as well, if you're walking down a tree, and you're walking down a row of 50 Acer Grisium, and there's 1 or 2 outstanding trees there, what I tend to do is quickly put a label on those 2. And of course, it'll just make that bit a bit more official. So it's just such a waste otherwise to go to all these places, especially where we know in the future we shouldn't be travelling as much as we should, or as we have, or as willy-nilly as we have.
Yeah.
I mean, up to last year, I used to be maybe 35 or 40 trips per year, maybe a bit more, sometimes 2 a week, and swimming about, not coming back and making full use of it is not allowed.
So we had a huge Chelsea palaver last year because of COVID, obviously, and then it was going to go ahead in May as usual this year, and then it wasn't.
Yes.
So, and now are we on for September, do you think? Or
I think we are. I mean, what we all found is that, I mean, as I'm sure with absolutely everything when it comes to holidays or whatever it might be, that having not knowing is far worse than knowing, isn't it? Really, I mean, just last year when I got back from Venice on the 14th of February. And note to self, girls, if you are single, do not go to Venice on Valentine's Day.
I can imagine.
Every church I walk past is covered in a cloud of confetti. I completely forgot that was the place to go together. Anyway, just a note to self. We had decided, I think what we did last year, because obviously it was much more, because we were the biggest supplier of, I think we had about 6 gardens we were supplying. And of course, they eventually called it in March, I think it was. But the problem is that we start for Chelsea June before. So the show is a bit like saying, "Guys, can you train for a marathon and then run about 22 miles of it?" We may or may not cancel it, but we probably will. So everyone was getting very grumpy. And of course, if we're going hell for leather for shows last year, I think when I got back from Venice, I realised that that it was game over. Of course, as we remember last year, do you remember everyone in Europe was about 2 or 3 weeks ahead of us?
Yes.
So people was coming. So what I did is that I just kept a very, very close eye on all the European shows of a similar size. And so we called it ourselves, which in about January, we just said it's off.
Right.
So we rang everyone up we were dealing with and said, right, we have got your plants here, but the final 5% of the last bits that come in, like the perennials, I've cancelled. And the other problem we had at the time, because normally we're potting like mad, but we put everything inside, which means it's all ready a month early. So everything, if you pot everything in March inside, it'll be ready in May. And so we made the decision and said, well, look, hang on a minute. We don't know if we're going to be open. We don't know if we're all going to be alive. We don't know what's going to happen. Whether slightly more extreme, I won't really care if it wasn't alive. But anyway, we need to worry about all of that. And of course, and our staff. We've got 32 staff.
Yeah.
So if any one of those got ill at the time, how many of us have to go home? Or So we decided it was off, and we decided to pot everything up. We decided we would carry on because some nurseries just shut the gates, furloughed everyone, and called it a day. But we had 17 acres of stock, so we thought we're not going to be able to call it a day and then restart. And you'd have a hell of a job to look after 17 acres of 2 or 3 people. You need at least 5. I mean, some nurseries just put everything, just didn't weed anything, didn't trim anything, just kept it alive and then hoped we'd be open. But anyway, we worked how we should be open again by June, and we potted everything outside. And then I rang everyone up that we're doing Chelsea for and said, guys, I'm absolutely certain it's going to be off. About a month before the RHS cancelled it. Can you please, obviously all these plants are going to be ready-ish from May onwards. What we don't want, there's no way, because the first stupid question everyone asked was, can you keep the plants till next year? And you just think, I just said to them, it's a bit like ordering a piece of fresh salmon, isn't it? Saying, on May the 23rd, I want that piece of fresh salmon to be fresh and for lunch. And then say, can you keep that piece of fresh salmon for next year? So anyway, most of it we got rid of by doing that. But of course, instead of doing one delivery or multiple deliveries to Chelsea, we then had the gardens to split up to 5, 10 deliveries to all around the country to various, various. I remember the day of lockdown was Mother's Day, wasn't it, last year?
Yes, that's right. Yeah.
And so Tom Massey donated, or Yo Valley very kindly donated all their plants to various London hospital trusts. So I thought, well, the boys were all a bit worried about it. I thought, well, I could do it. I could go trucking. I quite like trucking. So I said, where's my first delivery going to be then? Assuming it's going to be, London. And they said, Plymouth. I'm like, oh, good. I'll go to Plymouth then. So I got to Plymouth to Derriford Hospital, and I just assumed it would just be a dirty old roundabout that was half dead in front of the hospital, something like that. And of course, when I got there, I said, where are these plants going? There was hundreds of ladies around to help. And they said, 4th floor. And I was like, 4th floor of what? The hospital? And they went, yes.
That was Grace Alexandra.
I was
gonna say,
wondering
Grace
if it was
Alexandra?
hers. Yeah.
No. So what I had to do then, we had to then, because you got these big trolleys of plants, so I had to wheel the trolleys into the dead man's lift. You know, the lift that's big enough to take dead people. And that's great. So I had to put all the trolleys one by one up to the 4th floor, past the intensive care, round by the COVID bit. Now, great. So anyway, I survived.
Yes, clearly.
Probably a super spreader without realising it. It's all my fault.
Do you remember when we accused everybody of being super spreaders?
Yeah. Well,
we've stopped doing that now, haven't we?
I know. Well, I got back from Venice on the 14th, and of course, Northern Italy was where it was.
Yeah, you were the super spreader.
It was me.
It was you.
Yeah.
And then you took it straight to Plymouth.
I took it to Plymouth, yeah. But anyway, so that was Chelsea last year. So that was a bit of a mess. But at least we the worrying thing is that we made up our mind beforehand that it was going to be cancelled. And then if it was on, we'd have been in trouble because we'd have scrambled around the town stuff. But we had plants being grown in Spain, and in Spain, because it was all really awful, they were allowed to go to work, but they weren't allowed to deliver anything. So we had probably 2 Arctics full of perennials, which are all beautifully grown, due to come to us in April. And I had been to Barcelona in January to sort that all out. Of course, that was all gone too. So the poor lot over there, they couldn't deliver them to us. So they just had to watch all their plants flower and then go over. So then we had the hoo-ha. So then we had the next thing happened with Hampton. We just said, well, the Hampton Court's a much lesser deal, although it's still important. So if it's on, it's on, but I very much doubt it. And then we had we had to go through the motions, but of course by then you're fairly sick of going through the motions. It took me 2 months to count. I think I had 46 different events last year in various scales and various areas that have been done. But I think the key is to just look at Europe all the time and see what happens. I mean, that's what we've done this year as well. So again, we decided Chelsea was off around about Christmas time.
Right. But they still thought it was on, didn't they? The RHS was still saying.
Yes, well, apparently they had a Zoom call with various designers and designers and contractors about 2-3 weeks ago. And they basically started the call saying, look, isn't it all great the RHS has done this, Chelsea's on? And I think everyone just stood up and I think there was almost a revolt. People just saying, no, it's not. Because you can imagine, first of all, you're putting, thousands of people into Sloane Square. They all have to get there by tube. Then you're running them through a hospital with all our war heroes in. And then you can imagine if you're building a show in the end of April, beginning of May, what happened if one person on your team got sick? Everyone would have to go home from that garden and possibly either side garden. So everyone suddenly realised that the whole place would be just littered with unfinished gardens, and so there couldn't be a show. And then again, people said they're not prepared to spend 3 weeks killing themselves building a show garden, which might get 1 hour on the telly with no visitors, and then go from there. So I think there was basically a revolt, and everyone just said, "Well, it's off." So from there, after that meeting, I believe that's when they just said, "Right, it's off." Right. And we all went phew, because you can't cobble together, a plant list in a couple of months. It takes a year.
Yeah,
and there's so much money at stake as well, isn't there?
There's loads of money at stake, and of course, every financial. I mean, obviously, a financial director of every company who'd lost money last year is hardly going to say, "Oh yeah, no, it's fine. Let's do it again." That was the other thing I forgot to say, because none of the sponsors, the RHS were insisting that the show was on, but none of the sponsors were anywhere to be seen.
They'd all gone. They'd all stopped.
Gone. Yeah, shot themselves, called it a day.
So how come it's coming on then in September? They're quite confident now, are they?
I think they're confident again now. I mean, there was talk about having it. I thought it might have been a good idea to have Chelsea actually at Hampton Court, where there's loads of space and everyone can drive to and blah, blah, blah. But apparently all the infrastructure at Chelsea is fixed in the ground at Chelsea. So I think September, as we all know, we've got a whole summer to go through to. I mean, the warmth will kill off, any of the virus as well, won't it? Last year, September was the one key month we had, and now with all the vaccinations, hopefully now, September will be I think a very sensible month to have a go.
Yeah.
How's that going to be with the plants? I mean, that's going to be a completely different experience for you, isn't it?
Anything that we'd already started preparing, which we had for Yeo Valley, it's gone. I mean, there is absolutely nothing that you could use in May that you would be any good in September. I mean, you can say, well, even with the foliage stuff, you say, well, hang on a minute, what about the grasses? Well, the grasses will be spring flowering. And so the skeletons of the flowers will have broken by then. And of course, there's so many lovely grasses in the autumn to use with autumn tints. You'd want to use autumn grasses, not spring grasses.
Yeah.
So you've got all the panicums and Molineas and all that sort of thing that come into their own in the autumn. And then things like ferns and stuff, which they can just get bigger. But of course, for the last few years, we know we've endured these 100-degree heat spells, and none of our plants are designed to cope with that. So of course, it's everything. Well, if we get it, I think for the last 3 years in June, we've had 100 degrees from anything from a month to 3 or 4 days, and that's enough to completely frazzle any foliage. So you just can't do it.
Yeah.
So it's best to start getting up. But on the upside, normally through Chelsea, you've got a winter to go through. So you've got to so you start potting in the autumn and it gets rooted. I think it'll carry on rooting inside till about mid-December. Then it'll go dormant till about now, and then from about Valentine's Day onwards, it all starts to grow again.
Yeah.
So we don't have a winter to go through, and because of the warmth of the evenings as well, July and August are the fastest 2 growing months of the year. So it's waiting to the last minute, which suits us too, just in case there's another variant, or that's farm or whatever it is. We don't even want to go down that route. But at least by July we'll know what's what.
Yeah.
And it'll take about 2 months or 2-3 months to grow strong 9 centimetres or 2 litres into 5s, blah blah blah. So we can do all of that. The other thing to think of course, you've got all the fruit and veg. So of course, September is harvest festival time, isn't it? So all that stuff, fruit generally in the spring is either just flowering or just finished flowering, so it looks at its worst in effect.
Yeah.
But in the autumn, providing you keep all the yeasty beasties off them, it looks at its best.
Yeah.
And you've got all and vegetables too. So it could be. It's a great time. It's nice to do. I mean, all growers have always said it'd be such a shame there isn't show. I've done events in September, and you think, wow, there's so much you can put together. But I'm assuming because people have shown out by the time it gets to September for plant fairs, they've had enough. And also people have just got back from holiday and their garden is finished as far as they're concerned. Whereas really, it could be really rather exciting. So
I think us three really enjoy the autumn months as far as the flowers in our garden are concerned. I think we find that really inspiring. Perhaps, dare I say it, more than spring, actually.
Well, I think you're right. I mean, there's a totally different colour palette too, and it's an area that's never been looked at properly by shows because of for holidays or whatever it is. But I think now, with people knowing, people spending a lot more time in the garden across the board, I think it's a really interesting time of year. I mean, the only thing, my favourite show of that time of year, I have to say, was always. Have you ever been to the Malvern Autumn Show?
No, I've not been. But
I mean, of all the shows, that's what I suddenly realised. All the shows that you go to, and of course, some of it, I've over the years been to all of them, I suppose. But that's one of my favourites. And of course, the other thing is that there's a Bosco Plantarium at the end of August, which is a growers' show. It's a small international show in Bosco in Holland, where they launch all their new varieties. And that again, I've gone to that for 20 years in a row. And there's, you've got all the hydrangeas, and you've got all the, Mexican salvias, and all the rudbeckias, and all the echinaceas, all being launched at that show. And I've got some amazing photographs of stuff, all the hydrangea, all the paniculata types, all the new varieties that go with that. So it is an amazing time of year to go. So, but it's just an awful shame that now that Chelsea is going to clash with Malvern Autumn and Harrogate.
Will they still run those, do you think? Or do you think they'll?
I'm sure they will, but I think the trouble is you've got growers. The only downside is because, of course, the original point of Chelsea was all the growers in the tent. In the pavilion. The pavilion was how the Chelsea started. The landscape architects and show gardens were a relatively new introduction.
Yeah.
But I mean, I don't know what Blackmore and Langdon are doing, who grow delphiniums or West Country lupins, because of course they will not flower in the autumn.
Yeah.
So I suppose those guys can't be in. But if you go, or we'll have to show something else. So that's a shame, a real shame. But from a selfish point of view, having the show done for that will be lovely. But but I'm assuming those guys will be out. When I've gone to the Malvern Autumn Show, you've got people that specialise in asters and stuff. So of course that's all perfect.
Yeah.
But then they got to go. Well, do they go have a garden at Malvern and Chelsea, or do they do one or the other?
That could blow your brain, couldn't it? After a year of doing nothing.
Yes, I know. And then you've got all the giant veg things as well, which is really exciting. It's not, all these world record. That's getting bigger and bigger every year, isn't it? The giant veg things.
Yes. Pardon the pun. Literally.
Yes. I know. I remember one of our boys. He's so funny. He proudly told everyone he had the longest carrot in Wakefield, and his girlfriend just burst out laughing in front of everyone.
Good old Yorkshire.
So you're pretty manic at the moment then, Mark.
Pardon?
You're always manic. You've always been manic whenever I've spoken to you, but you must be pretty...
It is.
I mean, it up, especially with Brexit. I mean, how's that affecting you?
Brexit's been, it's been fine, but it's slow. So I think everyone I've spoken to, I think everyone talks to everyone and pats each other on the head a little bit, because everyone was anxious about what was going to happen after Christmas and with everything happening. And we've had so long to get ready for what exactly? That was the problem. Get ready for what? You're like, I don't know. What are we getting ready for? Get ready, yeah. Idiots. So we all got ready with what we had to do, and of course, the plant health stuff is obviously all the stuff with DEFRA and AFA. They've been really helpful, and Robin and I are members of this Biosecurity Alliance.
Right. Okay.
Or VS Alliance for short.
So what's that?
No one thought that one through, did they?
No, they didn't.
But that means so obviously it means that all the list of all the tricky things. It means we've got to come up with ideas all the time as to how to import stuff safely, and what plants we shouldn't be importing. And obviously there's the Xylella worry and Oak moss worry, which are the two that are the most worrying at the moment. And making sure that people are importing stuff sensibly and it's all checked. And I think each nursery by law has to have 3 visits a year from DEFRA or AFA to make sure everything you've got on site is okay. I think we have about 20, which we pay for to make sure. And again, there's plants on the list, so you can't import oats anymore at all, and have been able to.
Any variety.
Pardon? Yeah, all oats. No quercus at all. No, all or nothing at all. Not even. Suber and Quercus Ilex were exempt for a while. And then suddenly now it's a whole lot, everything
Right, take those off your plant list.
So
Lucy.
I need to take the Polsterus off my plant list.
You can buy them UK grown, but of course the problem is UK
not the big ones.
Yeah, the big ones are nearly all gone now, and of course what's left is small stuff. So
that's because I had most of them.
You've had nearly all of them, Moose. Keep your avenues and Monster roads. Yeah, I know. So that's how. So I mean that's complicated, and then of course you've got. Basically, what's happened with the lorries is that you can't really do shared or part loads anymore because you don't want to mix your load with someone else that might be bringing something in and they shouldn't be, and so on and so forth. And also, the paperwork involved. You all have to have an agent, which we were used to anyway before, where we bought stuff outside the EU, like our pots from Turkey and so on and so forth. So you have to have an agent in place to do the official paperwork. I mean,
so you can't so Joe Public can't just from Britain can't call a Belgian nursery and bring stuff across.
I know that's no bad thing either. But also it's you need to have a full. So basically, it makes out with the extra costs involved. It's best to have a full Arctic. Right. But then trying to fill a full Arctic with one individual nursery might be quite specialised is still doable but slower.
Yeah.
So you're trying to place orders with all sorts of people for all sorts of gardens and your own stock. And because once retail starts again, you'll be buying more stock in. But of course, now we're in an ice age for a week or so. That put paid to that. So at the moment, I've got loads of jobs waiting to start where the trees are not quite here yet.
Not
so
quite
slightly delayed. They're all in lorries or being dug up and not loaded or trundling their way across. But that's a bit frustration. I think that's just what you've got to have to calm down and say, well, look, these are the bumps in the road they're talking about. That is the bumps in the road.
And do you think that will get better with time, or is it something you're going to have to learn to live with?
No, I know. I had some grumpy emails from some German suppliers about 2 weeks ago, and I thought, well, I met Professor Nicola Spence, who's in charge of AFA and DEFRA, so I just forwarded them on to her and said, could you help? Expecting not a lot, and she was back and sorted all the problems out within 24 hours. So there's a lot of blame. What's happening is where people are grumpy. I think the German, in my experience anyway, so I don't want to generalise, but the German nurseries are the grumpiest. But what's turned out to be the case is that it's their authorities that haven't got stuff in order and are blaming us. So anyone that wants to wear a grievance can.
Okay.
All right, I know, and is doing so. So I know Nicola was saying that they had a Spanish furniture supplier who picked up some furniture from Gibraltar. And they chucked in a load of wood shavings in Spain to protect the furniture. And when they picked up the furniture in Gibraltar, and brought it back to Spain. They said, "Oh, you can't come back to Spain because you've got wood chippings from Gibraltar." And they had to prove that they had got wood chippings from Spain and stuff. So anyone that wants to have a little hoo-ha is having a go, but they will get stopped but you need to go up the ladder quickly. And but Nicola Spencer has been absolutely brilliant. But I had to go directly to her to make sure it's solved. Otherwise, but it does turn out that most of the problems are occurring from the countries themselves that haven't actually got their papers in order. And rather than say, "Well, damn, we haven't done this," but they've blamed it on, "Well, you left, so it's your fault."
That's about right.
Sort of stuff. But anyway, it's getting better, and we'll have to get easier because we can't stop. I mean, the good thing is we know all the salad stuff at this time of year comes from Spain. And I think, but these delays, this is why the poor lot up in Scotland had problems where it's so time sensitive to have fresh produce. If there's any delays, it's an absolute disaster of more than a day. So of course you can see why all the Scottish fishermen are having a horrible time and taking their stuff directly to Denmark or whatever it might be because they can't wait.
Yes,
but plants that are dormant at this time of year. It's lucky for this time of year that plants are dormant. So spending an extra day or two on a lorry is not a drama, but it would be for obviously fresh fish. So there's always someone much worse off. But you're not going to just say, "Oh, well, never mind, we can't have shellfish anymore because it's all going to go off." You're just going to say, "Oh, can't sell it anymore." It will get resolved. It's just a question of everyone, playing nicely and getting stuff done as fast as possible. But they said no one's interested for it not to work, is it?
Yeah. So what did you see as with all the shows and everything, going back to that? Obviously things have changed hugely because of COVID, but do you think shows are likely to change anyway in how?
I think they probably should, actually. I think everyone I've spoken to that got involved with shows, when we sort of the last year had May off, in effect, and we're closed, so we could carry on with the nursery carefully, with appointments only, with all the COVID secure stuff in place. But it's the first time in 20 years that I've actually had a May off, not having to work ridiculous hours on bank holiday and every day merging into another and so on and so forth. And you suddenly realise actually that I remember some sort of wise old nurseryman telling me years ago, "Mark, you need to do shows all the time, it's really fun. But the second it's not fun, you need to stop." And the last couple of years haven't been much fun, actually. It's got too much. There's too much testosterone and too much high octane stuff around, and too many dramas that shouldn't happen. And because obviously there's so much at stake, there's so much money and so much television, so much pressure involved. People can misbehave quite badly, and everyone is always going to from time to time, but you'd expect some apologies after. But I think moving forward,
it sounds like you've got some wonderful stories.
I was going to say, I want to hear about
You have.
I would bring up Lucy and tell her all of them with terrible language. I think what moving forward, I think the show. All the European shows were similar type, but I know there's nothing nearly as good as Chelsea. Chelsea's always it is the greatest flash on earth, but I'm not sure that having such a hugely extravagant show for 5 days is sustainable or should be sustainable in the future. That's a question that needs to be answered, debated, I'm sure. And also, there is all the gardens are meant to go somewhere on elsewhere after, but it's a very tricky thing to do because if you think you've got all the cost, you've got all this expense of a garden, which is 22 by 11 meters. So when you're going to say, "Oh, I'm going to rebuild that garden," you think, how are you going to build that garden in that space? And the answer is normally the space will be bigger. So you've got to take everything apart again, which has already been built once. So you're going to break stuff and you're going to have to replace stuff. All the plants, of course, flower in May and June. So those are finished flowering. By the time everything's been taken down, rebuilt, you might get to plant them again, 2 months later, 3 months later? So if someone spent the same amount of money rebuilding that garden, all the plants going back in. Look,
following May.
Yes.
Sad.
The idea that all those gardens will be built again afterwards is a great idea, and everyone does try very hard. Certainly parts of the gardens do get planted again. But to plant the whole lot when it's not flowering and finished flowering and been used and in fact second hand, and of course it doesn't cost you any less labour-wise or anything else to plant it, that's always a big ask. And so I think that I don't know whether these shows should have to go somewhere else without fail before they get into the show, and then whether the show should go on for longer, I don't know.
Right.
Because the nurserymen in the tent will argue, well, we can't keep, and it's so expensive to exhibit because everyone's staying in London, where they might come from goodness knows where in the countryside or around the world. So once their first wave of plants are over, they're not going to replace them. But you can be in a tent before now where the irises and the peonies and all these amazing plants that are there can look quite sad by the Saturday.
Yeah.
So of course then you'd have to think, well, then you'd have to replace it all, say, on a Wednesday or Thursday night, for the next part. But it would be nice to have it on for longer, I think.
Mm-hmm. They do in Europe, don't they? The shows.
They do. Yes, but having said, they do shows much longer in Europe. But they generally get planted where they were or stay where they were, so you can have it on the same plot each time. And again, Chelsea is still regarded without a doubt that no one can touch Chelsea. It's been the greatest flower show on earth, which it is.
Yes.
So I don't know. I'm probably interfering in areas I shouldn't be interfering, but it just seems. It would be nice if it go on for longer, and it'd be nice if everything definitely had to go somewhere afterwards in its entirety.
I think things will change though, won't they? I mean, I think the thing with this year is that it's been really painful, but it's forced us to change and and take a different view on things. And I think that's going to have an impact on Chelsea. But as you say, Chelsea is the greatest show on earth, and it would be an enormous shame not to have it in any form at all.
Yes, I think it just needs a revamp. I'm sure it needs, like everything else, it needs a revamp. Because the other thing, you've got all the plant health issues and worries as well, of course, which the Irish are so well aware of, and they've done so much to make sure everything's as safe as possible. But you're still bringing plants from all over the world into one spot in the centre of London, and so it must be a huge worry. And everyone has to be, and their plant health policy is very extensive, but it's still taking a risk, I would say. Especially with plant health becoming more and more of a worry with everything warming up. With everything warming up. I mean, I remember being in Germany 20 years ago, and there was a discussion about oak processionary moss coming further north, and everyone was laughing, said, "Yeah, but it'll never adapt. It's far too cold here." And 20 years later, here we go. So but then on the other hand, on the upside, perhaps with all the Xylella dramas, they were always worried about technically Xylella shouldn't be able to come this far north because it's too cold. But would you want to take that risk? So you've got all that. So maybe in another 3 or 4 years' time, they might conclusively say, actually, it is too cold and it can't be here. But on the other hand, with things evolving and getting warmer all the time, you don't know, do you?
No, all these bloody viruses.
Yes, I know. I know, but there we go. But I know, and then they've got Hampton Court before that. Hampton Court's meant to be. I don't know. What are your thoughts about July? It's got to be built in June. Do you think that's too early, or do you think we're all right?
What, Hampton Court in July?
Yeah, July the 1st. They're now saying
is that what they're saying? Are they?
Well, it's not cancelled yet. Yeah.
I don't know. I'd love to say yes.
Definitely
to go to a show.
Yeah.
But I don't know. They just seem to be pushing back.
Well, again, you see, that's the trouble. Hampton Court potting time is now, and Hampton Court getting ready time is now. So,
exactly.
Do you want to go help? And again, I think that's the other tricky part. I think the sponsors again are quite rightly waiting. I suppose they're waiting for this, end of February roll. How we're going to get out of this thing. But it just. I think the anxiety of show is almost better now. Now everyone's doing their desperate best to try and steer away from stuff that could be dangerous. Is that when someone says, actually, it's on now, instead of thinking, oh, great, isn't that marvellous? Think, oh, God, really?
I know,
that's trouble. We've got to try and I think we all need to get out of that. Because I think we're all getting so...
well, it's lockdown burnout, isn't it?
It is lockdown burnout.
Can't be asked to do anything.
Can't be asked. I know it is. It's one of two things. That people are either desperate to get out and go crazy or don't actually want to change.
Yes. You just relax into doing nothing.
I know. I'm sure at some stage we'll all have to, we'll all have to give a kick out of the bottom and get moving again when we do that. And I've been asked again. The Venice Biennale was cancelled. This is postponed until 2022.
Right. When's that normally on them?
That was due to open last year on May the 23rd.
Right. But
it's the Oscars for architecture in effect, or it's always had in Southern Venice, and it runs from May the 23rd till November the 2nd. So last year, that's why I was there. We were building a garden. Todd Longstaff Gowan designed this amazing garden, which was going to be on St George's Island, which is if you're looking out from St Mark's Square, it's the first island in front of you.
Oh, yeah.
And so that's where we were going to build the garden. But that's now been postponed again to 2022. But they've decided now that they'd like to go ahead and build the garden. And to highlight the fact that the show's on for next year. They want some beacon to show that the show's still on.
Yeah.
But that means we'd have to go to Venice with a team of planting people in May.
I'll come.
Well, I know, but I've got to say now, so everyone in the office say, don't be silly, we've done all this stuff and we've all been very careful and we haven't done anything wrong. And so you've got that hoo-ha to say, well, but then again, well, when do you start again? When? Yeah, I mean, if you're planting plants on an island, they get delivered by a boat, and there's only 6 of you. Is that a terrible risk, or is that stupidity, or is that getting back to normal? What do you think?
It's getting back to normal. We have to get back to normal at some point.
Well,
we just have to.
But then you've got all the girls in the office who won't talk to me because they heard that I might be thinking of doing it. So you've got
you've got 3 here. Yeah, there's 3 of us here.
You've got happy half of your 6 sitting here.
Well, that's what we need to do. Well, I've almost got to the stage. I know it's always saying because I'm single and nobody loves me. So I'd rather go and die than not do it now. I don't know if that's a bad thing. I don't want to kill anyone else by doing it. Yeah. Anyway, I've said yes to. We said what we're going to do is we'll take a punt at the end of March, middle of March, and then we'll have to have a mad rush because, of course, there is no nurseries in Venice, so all the plants would have to come from northern Spain and Italy, and we'll just have to worry about all the logistics then. But
gosh,
if we can do it, I'm going to do it.
So I'm fascinated. You seem to be somebody who works frenetically.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Do you sleep?
No.
Right, do I what, sorry?
Do you sleep?
No, I've got problems with sleeping.
Yes.
I don't know why, but the trouble is I've got all sorts of things that can help you sleep. What tends to happen is if I ever take them, which I try not to, but if I do, then I can't wake up in the morning. I eventually fall asleep at 5 and then wake up at lunchtime. Oh, that was not brilliant. So I don't, I've always been the same. But
so how do you switch off? Because you
fishing, salmon fishing. But I can't do that either. So salmon fishing. So there's 2 things. If you gave me a salmon rod, you can't. I never catch anything anyway. So all the people that get cross about killing animals. Well, one, it's only for catching salmon. Secondly, I don't really ever catch anything. If I do, it's straight back anyway. So it's all good. I thought on Instagram we've got this thing. I went to the River Tweed last year, and there's a really nice guy there who runs the fishing called Kevin. And someone put something on Instagram about me the other day, and he said, "Oh, he loves his fishing." He does. I thought, "Oh my God, now I'm going to get in trouble with all the vegans." Because I do, but I do put them all back.
There you go.
Yeah. Are you sure? I thought salmon was quite tasty.
Well, it is, but it's all that farm rubbish. They've all been fed. They've all been fed steroids, haven't they? So they're all 5 times bigger than they should be. These are wild salmon. So, but the ones you catch on the river are all wild, properly wild.
You can never get hold of Mark the week after Chelsea because he's like, no, not answering. I'm salmon fishing. You send him a message. I'm salmon fishing, or you just get a picture of a fish. And that's it.
Just kissed.
The thing is, as well, it's especially as we're getting older. If you go, because you're always standing in the rivers are quite fast, and if you've got waders on, which I always have, if you've got holes in you will fall over, and if you've got a phone on you, you're in trouble. So you can't take your phone in your waders. Well, you can, but if you fall over, you've had it. And also because there's always a big mountain in the way for reception, so you've got no reception either.
No, it sounds perfect to me.
Yeah,
perfect.
So that's how I quiet down. But I've only got a week a year if I'm lucky, so I need to try and do more.
Yeah,
but that kind of environment that you're in, with the water and the peace and the trees, and I'm imagining a beautiful environment which surely does help you to relax a little bit.
I mean, the main decisions you've got all day is whether you have a Scotch egg or pork pie for lunch, and whether you want that red fly or orange fly. And also, if I jump over there, will I fall in, and how deep is that? And what would happen? That's it. Yeah. There's nothing else to worry about. Yeah,
that sounds blissful.
Yes, I know. I tell you, got any Scottish food though. Look at Scottish food. Look at the menu. Think I don't want anything really. It's always like, I don't know why. I'm sure. I always said if you want to be a really famous chef, go and do it in Scotland because you've got absolutely no competition whatsoever.
Maybe you're just eating in the wrong places.
So much trouble, but yeah, Scottish food.
But before you say something, you really.
Might regret.
I'm going to ask you some questions, but they're just quick. They're quick fire questions.
Quick fire, okay.
Yeah, ready?
No rambling.
Okay. Toast or eggs?
Toast or eggs?
Which would you rather?
Both. Toast.
Both. Toast. Okay. I'm going to ask that one at the end. Music or podcasts?
Music.
Oh
shit! I'm on the podcast.
answer.
Wrong answer.
Trees or flowers?
Sorry?
Trees or flowers?
Trees.
Trees, yeah. Winter or summer?
Summer. God, I hate winter.
No, me too. Popcorn or pick and mix?
Pick and mix, definitely.
Roadrunner or Penelope Pit Stop?
Roadrunner.
Oh, I like Penelope Pit Stop.
No,
Okay, and ice lolly or lolly ice?
Well, I don't know. What is lolly ice?
Ah, well, there you go. So it's a nice lolly. I've had this discussion before with some colleagues, and they said, do you call it a nice lolly or a lolly ice?
Nobody calls it lolly ice.
No, they did. They did. They called it a lolly ice.
What, Americans or someone?
No, Northerners.
Excuse me.
But do you call it a lolly ice or an ice lolly?
Ice lolly.
Ice lolly.
Ice lolly. Everyone calls it ice lolly. Sure.
Well, no,
Where are they from?
Near Liverpool.
Okay.
Well, my family's from near Liverpool. I've never.
Maybe it was just a thing today. Anyway, I don't want to open a huge argument.
It's not that important. Good questions, though, Luz. Good questions.
They were.
Right. I know everything
what's
now.
Good on the old Quickfire.
It was. Yeah.
No Some people just can't do Quickfire. They just need to expand.
No, I can always do Quickfire. No, I was always told at school that my decisions are always really, really fast, and they're always right if I choose it. But if I think about it, I'll get it wrong.
Yeah.
So apparently, they said I should be a fighter pilot, but I'm too tall. I'd faint. I'm 6'3".
Wow.
So you
only if you do loop the loops, just don't do that bit.
So you became a horticulturalist instead?
Yeah, because I didn't concentrate. That's all that was left.
You've always done it, haven't you, Mark? You've always been a horse. It's been.
I have, and I just love growing things. There's two things I used to do when I said, let's grow plants, and grow plants in the bigger pots. I was always amazed how plants get so much better in the second or third year. Or rare breeds, chickens and ducks and pheasants and partridges and quails. So for my 7th birthday, much to my parents' dismay, I bought a polystyrene incubator, which I bought from Lanarkshire, and cost me $24.99, which is all my pocket money for years.
And then when you were 7?
Yeah, and then I used to get home from school, go and ask people locally for some eggs, maybe pheasants or quails, or people that used to have them. And then they used to hatch about a week before I went back to school. And I'd go back to school now and have a little shed with the warm lamp and those little chicks. And so I'm going back to school now, Mum and Dad. So I'll see you in 3 months' time. And they had to look after me.
And did you used to come home to bigger chicks, or
well, I did.
have they disappeared?
My dad used to. What happened? He used to like his sherry in the evening. And of course, what would happen is he'd go and shut all the chicken houses up in the evening before the fox came out. But he'd always be a bit pissed. So what happened? He said, I came back once and all my pheasants and quails were gone. I said, Dad, where are they gone? He said, he said, I opened the back door to just see if they're all right of the shed. But then one flew at me, so I fell over and they all flew out. By the time I shut the door, they'd all gone. So that was it.
That was his story, anyway.
I know.
You didn't get much of a return on your $24.99 then?
No, I didn't. No. But ducks are more fun. I do love ducks as well. Red ducks are always lovely.
Yeah.
Yeah. So anyway, but you can't really make a living out of that, so I didn't do that.
So you went into trees instead.
Yeah. Yes. or be a professional fly fisherman. But you can do that now. But there's no such job 30 years ago, 40 years ago.
No. Well, I'm glad you went into trees personally.
Yes.
Thank you.
Good. No, I know. Well, you bought most of them over the years, haven't you? Blimey.
I bought a lot.
Yeah. I know, and monsters as well.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's quite something, girls, to go to these nurseries because they don't have them here, those size, do they, in England? They don't.
Well, they don't have that range, no.
Yeah, these enormous trees. It's quite a privilege to see them, and a huge responsibility as well then when they come over and they're planted.
Yes, but I've got a picture of you in that hole when you're standing inside root balls. Remember, the root balls are the same size as you almost.
Right, we need that picture. We need that picture to go on our Instagram.
I'll send it.
Yes, please.
Yeah, I will. I'll send you when I get back to the office.
Yeah. Oh, thank you.
That'll be going on Instagram this week.
Oh. Thanks, Mark. It's so lovely to talk to you.
Oh, you too. So we're all done. We're all done.
Yes, fascinating as usual.
Yes.
Oh, good.
Very entertaining.
Damn. Okay. Well, I'm going to go do some work.
Oh,
You've been fabulous. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
It's a pleasure. Well, thank you very much for having me. I'm very, very flattered that you wanted me there.
Oh, no, definitely. Fascinating.
How many court cases we're going to have now since I've done my little chat? Do you think we're all right? I wasn't too... How many court cases we're going to be involved in now?
Yeah.
Well, there was quite a few countries that you probably won't be able to visit anymore.
Yes. Yeah. Don't worry about
Scotland and the salmon fishing, that's out.
Banned. We want to know about the bad behaviour after shows.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. I'll tell you all about it, girls.
All right. Well, you take care then.
Yeah. And I'll speak to you soon.
Yes, all right. Then you take care. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Thank you.
Bye.
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 You've been listening to the Restless Creatives podcast. To ensure you don't miss our next episode, please subscribe to our YouTube channel, the Restless Creatives podcast. If you'd prefer to listen rather than watch us, you can catch us on one of your favoured podcast providers. For more sneak peeks and behind-the-scenes fun, visit our Instagram @the.restlesscreatives or visit our website therestlesscreatives.co.uk.